Elden Ring is out, ladies and gentlemen, and it's been met with glowing reviews. If you've been checking out what critics have been saying, if you've been looking at websites like Metacritic and OpenCritic, you know that this is actually one of the highest rated games of all time right now. On Metacritic, the PlayStation 5 version is sitting on a 97 from 47 reviews, and on the PC version, you've got a score of 95 from 39 reviews, and this has made Elden Ring, if you exclude the duplicate listings of Grand Theft Auto 4 and 5, the 10th highest rated game of all time on Metacritic. It literally made the list of top 10 highest rated games of all time, and on OpenCritic, you'll see that the top critic average is sitting at a 96. 100% of critics would overall recommend this game. And on OpenCritic, the game is ranked even higher at second place, only topped by Super Mario Odyssey. So just insanely high praise for the game as a whole. But the one constant complaint has been performance. And this is something that I talked about in my review. I did highlight that there is a day one patch coming and hoped that that would fix the issues. I talked about, micro stutters that weren't too disruptive, but a bit too frequent for my taste. And then there's a whole weird issue of the game slowing down and then speeding back up, almost like it's buffering. That's the one that frustrated me from time to time when it happened during inopportune moments. But this being the PC version, it was impossible for me to say for sure, how everyone's experience is going to be like, because every system is different from person to person. My system's running on a 3080 with an older but still very capable CPU, and the performance was good enough as to not be unplayable by any means necessary, but noticeable in its issues that I did feel like the experience was disrupted, and I hoped that the day one patch would do the trick. But it would seem as though the day one patch actually made things worse from what reports are saying, and Eurogamer highlighted all of this with their Digital Foundry analysis. This was published just yesterday, February 24th, 2022. They tested the performance out across all platforms and after the day one patch dropped, and results unfortunately are inconsistent. Twitter user Nibel just kind of summarized what the conclusions were from them. Digital Foundry has analyzed Elden Ring version 1.02, which is the day one patch. PS5 and Xbox Series X run at 45 to 60 frames per second in performance mode and 30 to 60 frames per second in quality mode. So just a huge discrepancy and just a lot of spikes and drops that makes the frame rate feel unstable and stuttery. Xbox Series X and S can benefit from variable refresh rate for a more stable 60 FPS. To get stable FPS on PlayStation 5, it is recommended to play on the PlayStation 4 version, weirdly enough, because with the PS5, there's just more room for fluctuation from, 30 to 60 FPS, whereas on PlayStation 4, because there are less fluctuations, while the overall frame rate might be lower, it is going to be more stable. It's a bizarre situation. And then scrolling further down, here we have the Digital Foundry take on the PC version. It also seems like the issues plaguing the PC version of Elden Ring will not be fixed by its day one patch, unfortunately. And here is a bit of text from the Eurogamer article that reads as follows. The PC situation is also worth clarifying. As it currently stands, the PC version is using the latest 1.02 patch and has a number of issues that will affect all hardware configurations and all graphical setting presets. Elden Ring is FromSoftware's first foray into low-level APIs on PC, and the game uses DirectX 12. I've heard that a lot of the issues surrounding the PC version's performance has to do with DirectX 12 implementation. As we have seen in other DX12 titles, there can be severe and distracting frame time stuttering issues. First, there are stutters of up to 250 milliseconds in length when new effects, enemies, and areas appear on screen. That's where I figured the issue light was like loading in assets. That's where a lot of the stutters seem to happen, but there are times when I was in confined boss areas and still I'd see the whole, slowing down, then fast forwarding, a technical issue, performance issue that could completely throw off, a run of a boss. These types of stutter lessen as the play experience goes on and enemies, areas, and effects are revisited by the player. A second and more pervasive stutter appears to be tied to loading new game areas. When traversing the terrain, moving from one area to the next can cause minor one-off frame drops a few times a minute, or at worst, tumbling frame time issues that drop the frame rate from a steady 60 into the 40s. Variable refresh rate monitors using G-Sync or FreeSync help alleviate a level of the distracting nature of some of these issues, but leaning on the technology is not a good situation in light of how the console versions do not suffer from these stutters. So definitely, it would seem as though the PC version, performance-wise, is doing worse than the console versions, just optimization issues Other issues to note are the lack of ultra-wide screen support and no support for frame rates above 60 FPS and unintuitive graphical options that lack visible scaling, as we have seen with other titles suffering from other similar issues such as Final Fantasy VII Remake and Halo Infinite. It could be sensible to wait for further patches before investing time into the PC version of Elden Ring. So that really is unfortunate. I was hoping the day one patch would do the trick, but either it's been about the same or it's made things worse. And I actually did go back and play a couple hours of Elden Ring on the new patch, and yeah, I can also report that the issues have really not been fixed, and for me it's been about the same level as it was before, maybe a little worse, a little more frequent than before. Still not quite unplayable levels for me personally on my system, but bad enough that I'm like, okay, it's noticeable still, it's still distracting, and at times disruptive. So that's a damn shame. And so if you look at the Steam version of the game, you can see right now the reviews, 22,000 reviews at a mixed score of 59%. The game is seeing huge numbers, by the way. It peaked out at like over 700,000 players on day one. A bunch of people came into this experience, and it's probably going to be the highest selling FromSoft game, like by far. It feels like this game's just going to explode. But the mixed reviews, I think, are fair because performance especially matters in a Soulsborne game that demands that level of precision from players when it comes to dodge timing and blocking and attacking. Like, you know, it's such a simple to get into but hard to master combat system because of those timings and what it demands from the player. And if the game is contributing to the player performing worse because of frame rate stutters and frame rate issues and is kind of disrupting open world navigation or the combat, which is where things could especially get bad as far as performance goes. Like if the performance suffers during combat, it can get you killed during a good boss run, and that's frustrating. Stuff like that is just less tolerable in a FromSoft game that demands so much from the player. And so I do 100% understand why people are giving this game a mixed review. Though I will say that there is one suggestion here that helped me personally, and I want to relay this to you guys to see if it helps you out, just in case. I'm not saying this is going to be the be-all end-all solution. At the end of the day, it's going to be up to FromSoftware to release a new patch that will address this. But I did find that this right here helped me. This is one of the top Steam reviews. If you're stuttering, consider turning these settings down or even off completely. Depth of field, motion blur, volumetric quality, global illumination quality, and grasp quality. For me, turning down or completely turning off depth of field and motion blur significantly helped the performance. While I did notice like a couple micro stutters still here and there navigating the open world, it didn't feel like it was nowhere near as frequent as it used to be, and there has been no sort of that slow down and speed up effect that I would see frequently enough prior to making these adjustments following the release of the new patch. I had stuttering issues before I completely disabled depth of field and motion blur. Game runs perfect now aside from the short FPS drops when a new region is being loaded. That's been my experience after playing like 30 minutes of the game with the new patch with depth of field and motion blur turned off. So try that and see how it works for you. But again, no guarantees. I happen to have a more powerful system, 3080, which are, not easy to find, and obviously not everyone can afford the highest end systems. So not guaranteeing this will work, just saying this has helped a lot of people, judging by how, it's already garnered almost 1,500 upvotes from people. There's also this one Reddit thread going around titled Possible Fix for PC Frame Rate. I've gone ahead and highlighted the important bits on some of the other potential solutions that people have come up with. See what works for you. Pause the video when you feel like it and see if these instructions help. I'll also link this particular Reddit thread in the descriptions below. But you never know. It really, FromSoftware, at the end of the day, on your end, you have to resolve this. This has to be a top priority. And I think people are less tolerant this time because this has happened before with previous FromSoftware game releases, be it Sekiro, among others, Dark Souls, etc. Bloodborne on PS4, we all know what a kind of stuttery mess the frame rate can feel like with that game. Only the 60 FPS mod from Lance McDonald helped with that. So this isn't the first foray into performance issues at launch, and, at this stage, with it having been so many years since FromSoftware has released, Demon Souls and Dark Souls, we would have expected by now that they would have resolved all of this, but because they've been so reliant on what feels like an aging engine, And now they had expanded to kind of encompass the scope of Elden Ring, which is volumetrically so much bigger than other FromSoft games. Performance issues here were bound to be, I guess, even worse if the engine wasn't optimized enough, and I guess that might be what's going on here. I don't know. I'm not some technical wizard that knows about the specifics. What I can say is that, yeah, that we have been here before. These performance issues are not necessarily unfamiliar territory for FromSoft, and it sucks that we're seeing it again with Elden Ring, because it's right now the only blemish, as far as I'm concerned, the one blemish in an otherwise stellar, incredible package. Elden Ring is straight up one of my favorite games of all time. I've managed to put like 10 more hours in since the review came out, and I'm still discovering new things. Like, the scope of this game still amazes me, and just the level of just design creativity, both mechanical and visual and audio, across the board, from enemy design to the world to the locations to what I'm discovering. Like, to me, it's all been stellar, but maybe it's worth waiting before you pick up Elden Ring if performance is a major factor to you, especially if you're playing on the PC version. Now, FromSoft has been quick to respond, acknowledging that they've heard about people's performance issues, and so on Twitter you'll find this on the official Elden Ring Twitter page, a message for players about your reports on some performance issues in Elden Ring. Clicking on the link will lead you to this Bandai Namco blog post published just today, just a couple hours ago, a message about some performance issues in Elden Ring. Thank you for playing Elden Ring and your feedback. We're experiencing some issues that are preventing the game from playing properly under some conditions. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause and ask for your patience. Main items to be revised: regarding the problem of the mouse being too sensitive on PC, we'll send out a patch shortly. Regarding the problem of easy anti-cheat failing to launch when the Steam account name is set to 2-byte characters, we're aware of this and we'll send out a patch in the near future. Regarding the phenomenon of frame rate and other performance-related issues during gameplay, we'll be constantly working to improve the game so that it can be played comfortably on various PC environments and platforms. For the PC version, updating your graphics card drivers to the latest version may significantly improve performance. I myself can confirm that I did have the latest drivers installed and the issues persisted, so there's definitely a lot of work to be done on FromSoft's back end. So yeah, they're aware of it, they're going to work to resolve it, but you know, the argument is being made that this should have been resolved on day one, and that, you know, with each new FromSoft release experiencing the same performance issues, it is becoming less and less acceptable. And this is the one area where FromSoft is lacking. They can make masterful games with incredibly deep yet vague lore, with really compelling, punishing yet rewarding gameplay, and with Elden Ring, with this expansive open world and just how much there's to discover, and the scope that just keeps expanding and expanding as you keep playing more of the game. All that stuff is amazing, and I really do think Elden Ring is an achievement within its own right, but people absolutely have the right to complain about performance, have absolutely got the right to point this out, to highlight this, and they've got every right to either issue refunds or wait until the performance issues are fixed before delving into this game. So I really hope this is not something that will stain Elden Ring for too long, because there's just too good of a game here for it to be just brought down a couple pegs by performance issues. Now, I've seen some people wonder whether this is Cyberpunk 2077 levels of launch. To that I say hell no, because Elden Ring does very much feel like a complete product with tons of content, and the one technical area where this game suffers is performance. I've not seen any other bugs outside of that, whereas Cyberpunk, you could tell that this game did not have enough time in the oven. There was some stuff missing, some systems were not fully fleshed out, and way more bugs than what Elden Ring saw, alongside performance issues that Cyberpunk suffered. Elden Ring, it's just performance, but also, yes, performance is absolutely quite important in a game like this. For now, if you got the console version, that's probably where you're going to get more stable performance, particularly on the Xbox Series versions with the variable refresh rate that helps stabilize to 60 FPS. But if you're playing on PC in particular, I think you're going to have rougher performance. Though, again, it's been so varied. Some people straight up have been saying that on PC they've been seeing zero performance issues, but they saw some starting on consoles, and others like tweak some settings and managed to get it running perfectly. Again, try turning down depth of field or turning off depth of field and motion blur, see what happens with you, see if that helped. Like it did for me. And I don't know what will happen if I keep playing more hours with these settings turned off, whether I'll see that, you know, slow down, speed up issue again, or whether this is somehow resolve things for me. but it's all just too varied. You know, every PC varies from player to player, can vary from player to player, and there's enough variance that I can't guarantee anything. I can't give you a secret formula to resolve this. FromSoft just has to get on this, and hopefully sooner rather than later. So yeah, this is kind of what you need to know about the performance issues surrounding Elden Ring. Let me know in the comments below if you've bought the game, what your experience has been like with whichever version you got for Elden Ring, and, you know, performance issues aside, how you're enjoying the game proper, and whether the performance issues have been disruptive enough that you're going to maybe hold off until this stuff is resolved before you dive back into the lands between. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.